All right, guys. Gonna do a quick, I guess it's been 15-month review of the boat. That's how long I've had it now. Got about full season under my belt, 100 hours on the motor. We'll go over the good, bad, and the ugly. Mostly good, really. Just look at the boat. Paint job's been holding up. Decking's been holding up real nicely. Clean the boat pretty well though after every trip. Try to keep it in as best shape as I can. A couple little paint chips here and there. So one of the things I saw from someone else too that reviewed it is these railings. They're stuck on with two pieces of VHB tape. I guess depending on who did it and how much time and energy they took doing it determines the quality of it. I came back from a trip and the opposite side, see how that's moving? There's a gap there. The opposite side, about from here to here, was like hanging down off the boat. So I had to pull a bunch of it off, clean it up real good, and redo the VHB tape with some clamps, and it's held up ever since. But ultimately that was just poor quality control, in my opinion, of whoever put that on. Same thing with down here. I mean, the paint is a protective layer on the aluminum, but with the two separate pieces of VHB tape that's behind here, it seems like there's a good opportunity for, you know, salt water to get in there, sit and corrode over the years. So I don't think that's the best design. If I was them, I would have put a single thick piece of VHB tape on. I would have put it on really well and probably thrown a couple of rivets in just to keep it in place, because there's nothing behind here. It's all empty behind there, because that just comes off, and this is the same one. So we'll see how much longer it lasts, but so far so good, other than the other side. You can see the bottom here. I ended up bottom painting the bottom of the boat because I just wanted to kind of seal up that bare aluminum, and got epoxy coated and bottom painted so that it'll keep itself nice and sealed up, I think, for the life of it. I've been covering up the Minn Kota. A couple of reviews I had read was that Minn Kota over time just kind of really gets blasted by the sun and ends up degrading. But with this cover on it, every time I pull that off, it's like brand new. So over here you can see, you kind of might be able to see the line where it kind of changes right about there. So I had to pull all this off and re-stick it on. And it's been holding up real well. Windshield wipers, I'll add in a clip here. Kind of had to redo that one on the left. So you can see here, the windshield wiper in the stowed position is all cockeyed compared to this one. Now I'll walk around and show you from the front. Here's the front. Nice in line with the window. Come over to this side. It's all funky looking. And if you notice here, these are flipped upside down. So you can see the larger stud there is on the outside edge. If I come over here to the port side, the larger stud's on the inside edge. And the writing is right side up there. So not too sure if they're backwards or just, obviously they clearly weren't adjusted right. I did see on the paperwork when I purchased the boat, they send you all the paperwork of like the stuff they fix when it gets to the dealer. And there was a note about the windshield wiper being installed backwards. So, all right, a very annoying 30 minutes later. I got him about as close as I can. Just for some reason, I think them being backwards is somehow not right, because it's not allowing the two arms to stand straight up and down. But at least the top section isn't fully in the window anymore. There's not as much room on the starboard side, but I exercised the windshield wiper and it appears to be working. So we'll test that on the next run. Wasn't really sitting right. Needed new windshield wipers. I'll also stick those in there. They didn't last too long. When I received the boat and all the paperwork, the dealership kind of gives you the things that they had to repair when the boat was delivered. And that starboard side windshield wiper motor, I forget the exact verbiage, but it was like installed upside down or backwards or something. So those are Rocca windshield wipers. In the starboard one, everything looks like it's upside down. The bolts are upside down, the writing's upside down. So I don't know if it's supposed to be that way, or maybe I got two port ones and they just flipped one over to make it work. But that one on the right never quite works as well as the one on the left. Sorry, the starboard one doesn't work as well as the one on the port side. So works good enough, but that was a little bit annoying. This lift has been working great, keeping everything high and dry. No issues there. These guys are crushing it. See a hole on the starboard side. I just had it ceramic coated, so we'll see how long that lasts. But as you can tell right now, it looks great with the ceramic coat. Just got back from 2 full days of fishing out on the islands. Cleaned up real easily. So, this drawer, saw it on another review too. Every time you slow down, this thing slams forward and stops. So after the first trip out, I made a little latch here to keep it from slamming forward. It's pretty, I feel like that was a pretty big oversight on Stabicraft's side for not having some sort of latching or locking mechanism. Charging system's been working good. No issues on the engine. So one of the things that I found is that ultimately, since the sump on this boat, the wet sump, there's no through hull fittings, you know, where the water goes off the deck into the water or into the ocean. So because of that being the only way to get water out of the boat, after every trip, or if it rains, you'll end up with a couple of inches of water down in that. And over time, you know, water in the saltwater environment, sitting water is not good. So what I end up doing after each trip is I just kind of vacuum it out real quick from the water just to keep it nice and dry. And then everything in there ends up staying nice and dry and clean and corrosion free. But yeah, since that's the only way to get the water out of the boat, and this is on a lift, you can see there's the bung. The bung is never undone on this boat. So it's not like if you have it on a trailer and you pull out all the bungs and the water just drains out when it rains. So every time it rains, or it's forecasted to rain, I gotta come turn the battery on and make sure that pump is live, so that as it rains, the water gets pumped out of the boat. Yeah, one time I forgot to turn the battery on when a rainstorm came, and I came out in the morning, there was water pooled up to here, just sitting here, which isn't a big deal, but obviously being on a lift, it's not good for the lift. So every time it rains, I gotta come out, turn on the battery, and leave the battery on, which is kind of annoying. Probably not the best design. The bilge pump is not hardwired into the battery system, so you have to have the battery live for it to work. So just a couple things that I've learned to do with the boat. Those plates there are for through hull fittings. I think this screw was stripped and the seal on them just didn't work well anyways. So after, I don't know, a dozen or so washes of the boat, if you pull those bungs out the back on the lower sides where water isn't supposed to come out of, some water would come out of it, and it would be fresh water. And basically figured out that those seals weren't sealing. So when I'm spraying down the boat or what have you, water, or if it's raining really hard for weeks on end, water would end up going down through those plates underneath here, which is all empty and open. And I'd have to drain them periodically. So when I took the boat in for its 100-hour annual service, I had them pull those plates and reseal them. So I shouldn't have any problems with it now, but it was both plates. And when the boat actually was delivered, both of them were like loose. Like there was like a gap in there, and the bolts were all loose. So I tightened them down as much as I could, but they were still leaking a bit. So that's why I had them reseal them. So aluminum care. The dealer didn't quite tell me what to expect with aluminum. I guess maybe I should have done some research and known, but you know, you still do have corrosion issues with aluminum. It's a very robust metal. However, you still need to take care of it. So you can see after a couple trips of salt water up here, a little bit of surface corrosion kind of kicked in, and I did some research on it, and there's a product called I think it's AFC or ACF 50. I'll show you guys at the end of the video. And it's designed for aircraft. And you basically just spray it on the metal. Any bare aluminum, wipe it off. And it keeps it like brand new. So no big deal. But if I would have known that to begin with, it probably would have all looked brand new and never had some of that on there. But a lot of that's kind of oxidation too over time. The bare aluminum just oxidizes with the regular air and ultimately forms its own protective barrier coat. But that AFC 50 stuff is awesome and has really worked well. And basically I'll just, every couple trips, I'll spray it on all the bare aluminum, wipe it down, and you can see everything looks like it's brand new. Floor's holding up real well. This floor is definitely a must. Love the floor. It works real well. When you drop stuff on it, it doesn't get destroyed. Let's see, what else do we have? The bait tank's been working pretty good. Honestly, I use it more for just throwing fish in and keeping them alive until I'm ready to kind of fillet them up. Tuna tubes work fine. That motor's really loud. I will say it is annoying to have the washdown hooked up to the bait tank pump, because it just like sometimes it seems like it takes a minute for it to get primed correctly, and it doesn't have its own dedicated pump for that hose, but hasn't been the end of the world. Seems to work fine. I had these all rigged up for the electric reels, so that works real well. It has been working real well. Inside the boat, no issues. I think I'd said at the beginning the only real problem was that little piece there that's all sealed up. Those two were leaking, so I sealed those up, and hasn't been leaking ever since. There were a couple of screws. I want to say they're down there behind the toilet paper where the top gets joined to the bottom of the boat. They're like Allen heads like that, and they were loose. I got about 6 turns on them, so just again a quality control issue with the manufacturer. But I went through the boat, you know, after I got it with a fine-tune comb and Really tuned everything up, and that was kind of the only issues with it. Been really happy with all the space on the boat. Like I was saying at the beginning, God, there's just so much space. It's like you run out of room. I don't know when this happened, if it was delivered like that. I noticed it soon after it was delivered, but either way, that's kind of a bad design. It seems like they could have had a aluminum, you know, cutout that went in there, because that's all cracked up. So that's unfortunate. I've got a little cooking kit that fits under there real nicely. I haven't done any overnighters on the boat. I don't really sleep on the boat, but I do day fishing trips, and that's kind of my thing. All this stuff ends up in the back when we're actually out fishing. And I do have one of those little holders, suction mount holders for all the tools that goes on the bait board. And then these little Rubbermaid basket things sitting here for people to put their gear in. That's kind of mine over there, which works really nicely. These handholds are super nice when you're running. We're out here on the Pacific Ocean, and it's very rare that it's glassy. So we're always running out to the islands and, you know, 3-4 foot chop. And these are great for your passenger. What I've noticed when you're driving, like this boat's got autopilot, so you're not really holding it onto the steering wheel, you're just hanging out. But there's nothing to hold on to over here. There's nothing to hold on to over there. So it's just a little bit awkward. You basically end up just folding your hands, or I'll reach down here and hold on to this little L bracket. So I think if I was Stabi, I would have put some sort of handhold here, and I would have put another one on the side of here to grab onto, because when you're getting on and off the seat and you're adjusting the bolster, and the boat's running in 3 or 4 foot chop at 30 miles an hour, yeah, it's kind of a little chaotic when there's no handholds. Good handholds up top here, which is great. Stats on the engine, let's see. We run about 2.3 to 2.4 miles a gallon at 30 miles an hour, and I've just been getting that consistently. The boat tops out at about 41 miles an hour. Seems like regardless of how many people you have on board. Let's go up and look at the anchor locker. This thing can be kind of a pain in the rear end to get up, at least with one hand. So there's the anchor locker. Still in pretty good shape. I've really only used the anchor a couple times because I got the Minn Kota, and it basically is an anchor, which is outstanding. Some of that kind of reddish goo down there is just the AFC 50. It might be ACF, anti-corrosion formula. Anyways, I'll show you the can in a minute. But I douse this area. When the boat is in the water, there's always at rest. When the boat's at rest, there's about 2 inches of water standing down in the bottom there, because the drain for the anchor is below the water line. So I'm pretty sure it wasn't designed that way. But with the Minn Kota and the 3 batteries up front, I think there's more weight in the front than probably the original design was. So at rest, the boat sits lower in the front. The dealer said they never had any issues with it. It's perfectly fine, because I did ask about that much weight being forward. I mean, there's 3 huge batteries up front there. So I don't know, it's probably 150, 200 pounds sitting in the front at all times. At least 150 pounds, I'd say. So on the water, haven't any issues with that. Never taken water over the bow. Been in some pretty rough water. Ultimately with the wind, it'll come up over the front, you know, depending on which way the wind's blowing, but never over the bow. But I do think that it probably would ride a little bit better with those batteries for the Minn Kota system not that far forward. Because I just can't see them designing a boat that at rest, the anchor drain is 2 inches below the water line. So anyways, I doused this place with AFC 50, wash it off with fresh water, obviously, after every trip, and still looks like brand new. So you can see here, the Minn Kota plug's got a little bit of kind of lighter color to it, so it's exposed, sitting in the sun. Again, here's the back side of the Minn Kota. I've got it covered up, and the cover has really worked well. I'd recommend you guys doing that. I just got it's like a 9-foot kayak cover off Amazon for 16 bucks. It lasts about 6 months, and then I have to replace it. But definitely well worth the money on that. Roof's looking good, nice and shiny. Again, I just had this thing ceramic coated a couple days ago or a week ago, but I've been out fishing twice with it. Just destroyed the boat. Water up over the front. We had some wind out there with 4-foot chop, but man, it cleaned up like really easy compared to before. So far I'm super happy with the ceramic coating job that was done. Paint's worked out real well. Obviously it's like a protectant for the aluminum. These rod holders here, they're great for rigging. I use them all the time when we're fishing. Put the rod in there, put the weight up here, rig your hook, whatever, with bait, off it goes. But you can't, when you're underway, use them, because when you go over waves, they do this with any rod, net, gaff in there, and then they end up kind of foobarring out the back. So those are a great idea. Might be a way to tighten the... No, there's no way. It's just a channel. But yeah, good idea. Bad design though for underway. Again, I don't know. Dealer probably hasn't heard that before, but that's one of the things I've noticed with that rod holder system. But they are really nice. I keep them on each side when I'm fishing. And again, we just use them for putting the rods in when you're baiting or pulling off a fish. Charging system has been working real well. No issues there. Leave it plugged in all the time. Bait station here works real well. There's no water on the boat, fresh water. So I bought one of those Dometic 3-gallon water jugs with like a 12-volt battery operated little spigot that sticks here. And the little 3-gallon jug goes underneath here when we're underway, and then that just gives me a little bit of fresh water when we're out on the water all day long to wash your face or hands or whatever. I do know underneath this side and this side are completely empty. They're hollow, and I don't quite know why they're not sealed. I always thought that was a little bit weird. When I first called White Marina, when they had the water coming out of the back, when they pulled those bungs for the first 20-hour service, they had said, yeah, pump some air in there and see where the bubbles are. And I went with the flashlight and looked all around, and there definitely are some seams underneath this deck, like up in this area here, where the boat's kind of sandwiched together. So it's not a true kind of sealed unit underneath there, which I thought was a little bit interesting. But again, for me, I determined that the water was coming in from those plates, and that was a pretty easy fix. But I don't know, I thought that would have been a great place to put a freshwater tank. Even without the freshwater tank, personally, I think those chambers should be sealed. I'm not an engineer. I know all the sealed flotation comes from the sides, but any chambers that are open on aluminum and are susceptible for water intrusion means they're susceptible for corrosion. And again, just looking at the longevity of a boat, I'm sure this boat will outlast my lifetime, but I'm the kind of person that likes everything to be maximum effort when you're putting stuff together, and triple strong. The seats are super comfortable. These cooler seats. Typically just use one as a food cooler, one as a fish cooler. I've got a kill bag too if we're gonna go out and target some of the larger species that are in our local waters, but these are great for just rockfish, sheep's head, whitefish. That's kind of the go-to out here, unless we have yellowtail or white sea bass running or anything like that. But these are actually really, really comfortable. When I fish, I actually pull this whole kind of wind guard back here off. It just slides out the top there, and I never fish with this in. If I'm just cruising up to, you know, one of the local marinas with my wife to go have lunch or something like that, we'll leave it in and just roll the center up. But I typically take this whole thing out, and you'll sit right there facing that way, leaning up against that seat. Really comfortable seat. I typically fish this boat with me plus 3, total of 4. I've done 5 before, me plus 4, and that works out just fine as well. But 4 people on the boat, there's plenty of room for everybody. Yesterday, I guess it was the day before yesterday, we were out. We just hit a hot pocket of whitefish, and we had 3 guys every cast within 30 seconds pulling in fish, and I was just running around dehooking everything and putting it in the cooler, and plenty of room. We didn't get jumbled up. Really love how high all these gunnels are, thigh height. Walking up the front, same thing. The driver's seats. I was a little bit questioning whether or not I was going to want to put some sort of air ride or suspension system on here. I used to have a Grady White boat. That was some of the questions in the comments. So the Grady White I had was a 265 Express, and I can only speak to that one because that's the only one I've ever owned. But that boat did have a better ride than this boat. I think the Grady hulls and the glass designs of those boats, they're just heavy and they're just mashers. And they're very comfortable in rough weather. Now, that being said, this one is also very comfortable in rough weather, and it's a difference that is negligible in my opinion. Definitely the Grady was better ride than the Stabi, but the Stabi still has an outstanding ride. And I believe it's better than a Parker boat. Those ones kind of slam a little bit, but that's just my opinion. And I haven't ever needed a air ride, suspension, or anything like that on this boat. The seats are perfectly comfortable to sit in, cruising 30 miles an hour and 3 to 4 foot chop at 6 seconds, and just run to the islands for an hour, depending on where you're going. I never have any issues whatsoever. The cockpit itself, the sealed cockpit, great visibility. These windows are plexiglass. I don't know what level of, I guess, quality. I would imagine it's a pretty high quality plexiglass kind of window. It's definitely very thick, but honestly, I was a bit surprised. I was thinking those were going to be glass, and then it arrived and they're not. So I take a lot of care when cleaning them, because as you know, anything that's plexiglass can just scratch really easily if you have a bad rag, something's on the rag, etc. A windshield wiper goes bad and there's the metal kind of a skeleton left over. So you just got to really take care. I'd imagine at some point in time in the future, hopefully a long time away, 5, 6, 7 years from now, when that does happen, the fact that it's all rectangular, it should be pretty easy to replace with either more plexiglass or an actual glass, like automotive style rated window that's shatterproof. But again, I'm not the engineer. I'm sure there's a reason they went with that other than money. At least I hope so. But I was surprised that it wasn't glass and it's plexiglass. Autopilot system, outstanding. The autopilot system, the digital engine control system, the Minn Kota system, all of that is really amazing. The live view down, I can't tell you how nice it is to have all those systems. They've all worked flawlessly, never had any issues. The spot lock on the Minn Kota works great every single time. Like I was saying, I've really only used the anchor a couple times when I've left the boat for an extended period of time and went to shore. Other than that, the Minn Kota really has worked flawlessly on keeping us on the spot. The autopilot system will track a straighter line than I could ever drive myself, so that works out very, very well. Haven't had any issues with that. I did have to have the dealership adjust the the lock to lock on this, because when it got delivered it was 8 turns, I think maybe 6 or 8 turns lock to lock, and I changed it to where under I forget the speed, but we'll just say under 20 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, it switches to 4 full turns lock to lock, which is great for maneuvering in tight quarters. This boat's on a lift, so the little obviously berth that I have to drive it into is pretty small, so it's nice to have that maneuverability with the 4 turns versus the 6. All the plugs there, honestly haven't really had to use them all. Again, I think I told you guys at the beginning, I didn't realize that the boat came with a couple already. So, looking back, if I would have known that it came with these plugs, I probably would not have had those installed. It's great they're there, but I've never had to use them just because I don't have that much stuff plugged in. I do have a 12-volt pump for an inflatable stand-up paddleboard I have, and it plugs into those and pumps up the sup no problem. So that works out real well. As far as noise, so I got the foam-filled pontoons on this boat, and I can't tell you what it sounds like without it. I did go on a ride a couple times with a buddy of mine that had a 2750, and he did not have the foam filled, and I seem to remember his boat being louder. So I do think the foam does ultimately give you some noise deadening effect. So I am happy that I did that. Haven't really had any issues with fog in the morning. I was worried about not having a heater. Sorry, not fog. We have a lot of fog out here, but I haven't really had any issues with the windows kind of fogging up in the mornings, which that was the one thing I was thinking the heater was going to be needed for. But I've been fishing every month out of the year here in Southern California, and I basically, at worst, I wear, kind of PJ bottoms and a sweatshirt on the way out, but most of the time I'm board shorts and a t-shirt. Just because the cabin is so outstanding and it keeps you nice and warm away from the wind. Love the boat, and everything's been working really, really well. So yeah, you can see there's a lot of stuff up front there. I've tried to remove everything that has any sort of weight. So like when we're fishing, obviously the tackle box is in the back, there's life vests up front, everything else is pretty lightweight, just to try to keep that bow as light as I can for the rougher water. Again, I've never had any water go straight up over the front, and I've stuffed the nose into some pretty good swells. But anytime there's a crosswind, which happens pretty much all the time out here, you're gonna get wind over the top and on the windshield. Windshield wipers work great, except for this right one that I was telling you kind of just is a little off from the left one, but it's a lot better than not having them. All right, one of the other things that I noticed shortly after I got the boat delivered, see how that is crooked? So that's a pretty stout piece of metal. I don't know what they did. You can see on the bottom there's like a little notch out of it. I don't know if when it was like being shipped or what, this thing like got dropped on the bow, but that would take a lot of force to bend that thing. So I thought that was a little bit bizarre. I didn't really ask the dealer, because what's the point? What are they gonna do? My standards are pretty high for these kinds of things, so people might say, oh, that's not a big deal, that's just a little something or the other, and I get it. But for me, when you get a new boat, it should be a new boat. I think if you told Stabicraft, hey, I'm ready to take the boat for delivery, but I'm short $4,000, that's just kind of how it rolls. Everybody does that. They'd be like, okay, no problem, you can't have your boat. But when you get a boat delivered and things are nicked a little bit or not working quite right, a lot of times I think it's, it's just kind of how it goes in the industry. But overall, I'm extremely happy with the boat. Would I do it again? Yes, absolutely I would. It's a great boat. I feel super safe in it. Everybody that comes fishing with me loves it. They think it's like a tank, except a really fast one. Outstanding boat. Everything on the boat performs really, really well. There's obviously the couple little things that I've pointed out that I would do differently. Having said all that, it's a great boat. Would I recommend buying one? Absolutely. If you can find one that you feel is a good value, you're not going to be disappointed in it. I would definitely say that if you're buying a used one, take a look at all those kind of hidden areas and just make sure everything's been kept clean, because that's important, you know, in these things. If you obviously it's aluminum, right? So if you drop a piece of copper down in that bilge and don't ever notice it for 6 months, you might end up with a hole in the bilge. So you just got to make sure you look for all that stuff. I think if you're going to buy a used one, obviously if it's new, you're never going to have that issue. My only gripe really with this boat being out of the water is, again, I don't take out any of the plugs, right? I leave all the plugs in, because if for some reason this lift fails and it comes back down in the water, obviously I don't want it sinking. So the plugs stay in at full time, and again, that just means that every time there's rain forecasted, I come out here and I have to flip the battery on to make sure that bilge pump is alive to get the water out of the boat. So it probably could have been, you know, better design on my part, I guess, if I'd have known that. Chatting with the dealer about wiring that straight to the battery, especially since I got it on a battery tender. Maybe I'll do that on the next, you know, annual service, just to kind of take care of that headache. And I also don't like the fact that there's always, you know, two inches of water or so down at the bottom of that bilge. They're probably, you know, that's just the way bilge pumps work, I guess. They're not going to get the water all the way down to nothing. But just because I want to make sure everything keeps itself dry and corrosion free, I take a shop vac and I vacuum the water out of that thing, and I leave the hatch off when it's going to be parked for a while, just so it can stay nice and dry. This boat is a beautiful boat, and all you guys that have them understand what I mean by that. I mean, it's kind of like a piece of artwork as well. It's a great boat, but because of that, and because of my own personal kind of standard of care, it takes me a couple hours after every trip to get it all cleaned up and get it looking brand new again. So in general, boating, this is like the fourth boat I've owned, second large boat I've owned. I've been driving boats since I was, you know, a little kid. I would say that the only advantage of getting a used kind of beater boat is that you don't have to worry about the way it looks. So there's definitely value in the idea of just getting a good solid hull that's 20 years old, putting a new motor on it, putting new electronics in it, parking it in the water, leaving it in the water, and just paying someone to clean the bottom of it and never worrying about it. Don't have to wash it down or anything like that. That obviously will help in terms of the amount of time it takes to take care of the boat. But it's a beautiful boat. It's definitely a head turner. Everybody loves it in the harbor. Got some t-shirts made, which are awesome. But yeah, overall, I give it a thumbs up. It's a good boat. It's worth the money that I spent for it. I appreciate the product that Stabicraft puts out. I think it's definitely a very good boat and better than a lot of the boats in the same price range that are out there for what you get. There you go. Comment in the section or down below if you got any questions. I'll try to answer them. Sorry it's been so long. I just wanted to try to shoot this out real quickly, just to give you guys an idea of what I like, what I don't like. And yeah, it's an awesome boat.